Welcome to the early wedge. It is Open Championship week and it's Monday, so we must be DFSing it with Sia Nejad. Hello, Sia.
Hello, how we doing? I am excited about this event. I'll tell you with respect to the Best Bets show, I will be giving out Barracuda picks as well. And a quick congratulations to Mike McClure, who dominated DFS last week.
There he is. Mike McClure is here right in the middle of your screen if you're watching on YouTube. Hello, Mike.
Hello, Rick. Thank you, Sia. Thank you, Rick, as well. As always, I do use rickrungood.com for helping me with a lot of the stuff that I ultimately do. And I will say, while I am transparent, I do my own process. I run my own sims. If you watch the show, you know I am not afraid to do my own thing and talk about it and be very aggressive on stances. I would not have played Pinch if it were not for rickrungood.com.
Wow.
Can I add to that, Mike?
Well, you can absolutely add that, Josh. Clip this, Josh. This is very handy. Mike, the check is in the mail. Sia, yes. Would you like to add to that?
On Tuesday, we're doing the Best Bets show, and I give out 4 plays for the alternate event. And I'm on a train to New York on Wednesday, so I have some extra sort of downtime. I was doing the early edge meetup, which was an awesome success. Hopefully, we'll do that again soon. And as I was doing that, I was looking at first round leaders for, again, the alternate event. And I was on Rick Run Good, and I'm like, wait a second, William Mao. He is dominating with the ball strike. I'm looking at the Holy Grail. His putter has been bad, but the 7 tournaments prior to the 3 bad ones, his putter is really good. So I tweet out, hey, I'm adding somebody to my card at 70-1 as a first round leader and as an outright. It's William Mao. And who wins yesterday afternoon after the Scottish Open? William Mao at 70-1, a lot of cash tickets. That one also courtesy of RRG.
Oh my goodness, you guys are too kind. Well, I think we should probably just run it back, do it all again, this time with the bigger prize pools, the bigger contests, everybody in the world, live golfers included, all in one spot, because it is indeed the final major championship of the year. It's the Open Championship. We're going to Royal Portrush. It's in Northern Ireland. And Mike, you get first crack at this. We got a taste of links style golf last week at the Renaissance Club in Scotland. This is going to be, in my opinion, basically as traditional links as you can get. Your first take on the Open Championship.
Yeah, traditional as it can get. Not going to be the same as what you just saw, but still somewhat similar, some slower greens for sure. If you played well last week, we're definitely not penalizing you for moving on to a little different setup. That's for sure. The thing that I want to look at is still going to be weather. I think it's actually going to be relatively calm compared to what it could be. And I think that'll be interesting. I think it'll be a little more scoring than you might have thought potentially when you think about this event. Definitely need good drivers of the golf ball. Definitely need approach play, the best approach play. One thing that two things. I used it last week a lot, which was 3-putt avoidance. I weighted that in kind of heavily with a lot of my stuff. Very much going to be in on a 3-putt avoidance again, and then just simply gaining greens in regulation. That is what I am looking for here. And that's going to be weighted extremely, extremely heavily for me.
Yeah, the penalty for missing greens is significant. As you can imagine, it's pop bunkers, it's short area, it's fescue, it is greens that are elevated, pin positions that are going to be devious. The forecast for the week is ever changing, but the thing that has stayed consistency is the rain. There is a chance of rain or forecasted precipitation every single day of the week. The winds are not as bad as you could get, anywhere from 8 to 13 miles an hour, and then calming down a bit on Saturday and Sunday. So it's not at this point going to blow these guys off the golf course, but it is going to be annoying, and it's going to make for a more wet track than normal.
Yeah, I think the big fear for DFS players and the golfers themselves is, if they're in the bad part of a wind wave. So if the wind stays relatively down, sub 15 mile per hour sustained winds, a lack of gusts, I think we're going to have pretty calm conditions for an Open Championship that sometimes, because it's exposed, can be a huge factor. So yeah, the rain we'll have to monitor. The wind we'll certainly have to monitor, because that could change as well. And because this is a DFS show, even with the wind being down a little bit, I still think if you're playing a lot of lineups, it might be a good idea to play some lineups on one side or the other, or I should say, and the other, AM, PM, PM, AM. That's something we can address during the live chat at 4:00 on Wednesday, but because we'll have a better read of the weather. But I still think that stuff is in play when it comes to wave advantages and things of that nature. Just maybe not as much as we would have originally thought.
Josh, if you could pop the scorecard up, that would be good. And dare I even call it a scorecard, because they call it the official card of the course. Ho, ho, ho. And see, I'm going to bounce this right back to you here. So we saw Portrush in 2019. We did not have like the shot link information to then convert to strokes gained back then. Shane Lowry was the champion. When you look at this golf course, is there a skill set or skill sets that you're going to find most appealing for this week?
So as I give my answer, it's going to be kind of a cop-out, I think, because I think the complete game is in order. I mean, I think length is, I wonder, Rick and Mike, what you think in terms of how far askew you have to be off the tee to really find trouble, like almost from like a yardage standpoint, from like an exacting standpoint, because it does feel like accuracy, the narrative is accuracy, certainly more important than length. Like, again, we could just look at total driving and call it a day, but I just wonder if if you're like super erratic off the tee. I mean, obviously that you're going to be in the tall grass and some like major fescue and bushes and things of that nature. I just wonder how you two are weighting that. But the all-around game, like I think approach is really important, especially with these undulating and just these contoured greens. I think that lends itself to around the green play being pretty important as well. So what does that mean? I'm looking at tee to green. I'm looking at weighted tee to green. I'm certainly, again, looking at approach, looking at putting to a small extent. And then to some degree, looking at links form and looking at guys that I think are going to be good out here, but like might be great stateside, but tend to not be good on links courses.
Well, Mike, looking at the drone footage, the flyovers, all that fun stuff, you get those pop bunkers that not only line the fairways, but often cut into the fairways and affecting the landing areas. Then you start getting that kind of rugged, you might get a good lie, you might get a bad lie type of rough. And then the farther you miss, kind of the worse it gets. You get into the fescue, you get into the gorse bush. There are a couple of holes with OB very close to edges of fairways and very much in play. There's internal OB on a couple of holes. So the driving test at hand, I find it to be quite challenging. How do you assess what these guys are going to have to do off the tee?
Yeah, it's definitely challenging. I will say last week I was very firmly on team distance over accuracy. I will be the opposite here. But again, I'm not going to penalize someone for distance, but I think that it's important to quantify too, that we're not talking about like Bryson distance where you're just sheer power and then going to go brute force it out of trouble. I think that if you're someone that's a little sketchy off the tee, you need to be just extremely creative with your game all around and not just be a true bomber and a club head speed guy and just being that, I think is not going to work well. So I'm going to be leaning more on the accuracy for sure. The metric, again, if you're modeling or looking at it, the metric that I will be using is simply greens in regulation gained is going to be what I'm going to weight a lot. And then a lot of it will just simply be approach play, not a heavy rating on just like strokes gained off the tee necessarily. And I'm not even really accounting for driving distance at all in terms of modeling.
Obviously, we get the Rhodesia. So this is again, we haven't been at Royal Portrush in 6 years, but we've got Xander, the champion golfer of the year, Brian Harmon, Cam Smith, Colin Morikawa, the last handful of years. How much, if any, Open Championship history will you account for this week, or would that be a small slice of your pie?
It would be a small slice of my pie. I think I'm going to use it more as a penalty for guys who have really bad Open Championship experience. Again, you mentioned the Rhoda, so different course, at least since 2019. So yeah, I think Harris English is a pretty good case study. If memory serves, going back the last 3 or 4 years at the Open Championship, Harris English has had really bad Open Championship form, and yet he should be a relatively popular player given his form. I think Harman is probably on the other side of that. I think they're similarly priced, and that's why I brought them both up. But I think I will use it more as a tiebreaker, but in the penalty sense. Like if you have great Open Championship form, it's very likely I was probably going to like you anyway. And I don't know that I'm going to break tiebreakers in that capacity. It's really tiebreakers the other way with guys who just, Sam Burns is a good example. I love Sam Burns. And maybe if nobody wants to play him, I'll play him in DFS. But he has really bad Open Championship experience. I mean, kind of bad major experience as well. And that just might be the kind of thing where I'm like, all right, I'll be on this guy instead of Sam Burns.
Okay. Well, listen, Sia's starting to name names. I want to name some names. We need to look at the cheat sheet. We need to figure this thing out. We're going to do just that after a quick word from our partners.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
And we're back. Here it is, the cheat sheet on rickrungood.com. There are 4 golfers, just 4 of them, over $10,000 this week. Scottie Scheffler leads the way at $14,200. If you're thinking, Rick, does that mean we have a $5,000 tier this week? That's right, we do. We'll get down there in just a bit. Rory McIlroy, 11.5. John Rahm, $10,400. And Bryson DeChambeau is $10,100. Mike, you were the moneymaker last week. Let's get some info here on the top of the board, please.
All right. I have them ranked. Fortunately, it's easy. We can run through it quickly. It is a very clear John Rahm number 1 for me.
Okay.
Rory is number 2. Scottie is 3rd. Bryson is a distant 4th. And I am famously quoted as saying there is a price point and ownership combination that makes every golfer playable. I don't believe there will be one of those for me to play Bryson DeChambeau.
Come on. If Bryson was $6,000 and 1% owned.
Correct. Of course.
Well, we are far away from that. Let's start with John Rahm here. He is your number 1. You were very confident in that coming out of your mouth. What do you see? What do you model on Rombo that gets you there?
He's just been really good. And he's also I rarely give you a lot of the emotional side and a lot of the, non-data driven stuff. I've watched a few interviews as well. I really believe that playing this event, I know he cares about the Masters a lot. He cares about all majors. I really believe that him playing this particular event at this particular course matters a lot to John Rahm. And that is important to me. But he's just been absolutely phenomenal, in my opinion. He is someone that does have the length. He does have the ability to drive the golf ball very well. Checks all of the boxes I'm looking for. Good on approach. He's actually 4th in this field in terms of greens and regulation. Again, very, very important for me. Talking about the approach play, though, and long irons, I like him. I think he should be a clear number 2 behind Scottie in the betting market. I've got pretty significant value on Rahm winning outright. So I like Rahm. The price point, I think he's probably going to be the most popular golfer this week in the tournament. But for good reason. I will be tagging along on Rombo.
$10,400. I believe the order, Sia, was Rahm, Rory, Scottie, distant Bryson DeChambeau. When you allocate your resources to the top of the board, how do you break them down?
It's similar. I would probably go, and again, we're being price conscious here, right? I mean, like let's talk about Scottie's price relative to the other 3. I mean, Scottie's $14,200. If you don't play Scottie, it's really easy to make stacked lineups, which we can get to in just a second. But yeah, long story short, I like Rory the best here. I don't think it's enough of a price increase for me to be off of him. He's probably going to be pretty popular because he's 11.5. John Rahm also probably going to be pretty popular at 10.4. Bryson's interesting. I'm just curious how unpopular he's going to be because obviously there's going to be a growing narrative like, this is not the tournament for Bryson. I agree with everything that Mike said about John Rahm. His Open Championship form, like we talked about earlier, very good. The around the green play, the things you're going to need here off the tee in particular, John Rahm checks all those boxes. So for me, it's Rory, then Rahm, and then Scottie and Bryson. However, I don't think I'm playing Scottie this week. I'm not 150 max guy. I'm probably going to be a 10 to 15 lineup guy. I'm going to be playing versions of Rory and Rahm, and I will absolutely play them together as well.
There's a really good question here from Star Lord's dad in regards to John Rahm. And Mike, let's flip this question around. There's a price and an ownership to play everybody. I assume there's a price and an ownership to fade everybody, which is what Star-Lord is getting at here. At what point would Jon Rahm become too popular for you to move on to, let's say, Rory McIlroy as your top option?
It's a fantastic question. The way I play is, again, very, very aggressive. I will tell you that I'm also meaningfully higher on Jon Rahm than the market is. Just when I say that, I mean, like, from my overall win equity standpoint and how often I have him winning versus implied odds in a betting market. So knowing that I'm way above Rahm and wanting to use my number on that, I would need to see Jon Rahm north of 50% for me to go not play him, or at least start thinking about not playing him. I am more than comfortable entering into a situation where I'm playing Jon Rahm at 35%, which is where I think he will probably be. When I go run in an initial build of lineups, I get Jon Rahm. Again, I'm only playing 3 lineups just like I did last week, but I still model it out and build it as if I were building, 150 set. When I do that, which takes a 5,000 lineup sample, I'm getting Jon Rahm in 90% of them. So it would take a ton for me to come off of Jon Rahm.
11th at Portrush in 2019, 3rd in 2021, 34th at the Old Course, and then a runner-up and a 7th place finish are the last 5 runs for Jon Rahm at the Open Championship. Certainly splendid stuff. What else about this 10K range? See, I tend to agree with everything that's been said, but I'm not like ready to get away from this yet, right? We haven't even had a chance to really dive into Rory McIlroy. Like, I don't know. There's too many good names here at the top to just move on to the 9s.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason I like Rory, by the way, is because of what we're seeing here on Rick Run Good, like what he's done with the putter, what he's doing with the putter over his last couple of tournaments. It feels like he's comfy on the greens, and the ball striking has been a little hit or miss, but I think Rory is, again, if we're talking price in DFS, if he's going to be as popular or less popular than Jon Rahm, then I'm all aboard the Rory train. And I don't often say that. I do want to point out, though, speaking of this 10K range, let me just give everybody that's listening or watching a breakdown of how much money you have left when you stack some of these guys together. Rory, Rahm, and Xander, by the way, we haven't gotten to Xander yet, leaves you with 6,133. And that's a ridiculous lineup, right? Like, that's ridiculous. 6,133 is not a lot of money. You can make a lineup that way, but let's be a little bit more realistic. Rory, Xander, and a guy like Lowry, somebody in that range, leaves you 6,500. And again, because there's a 5K range and a rich 6K range, that's actually more money than you think. You could go Rory and Rahm. It leaves you 7,025, which is a lot of money, again, given that there's a 5K range here. You could go Rory, Rahm, and then add a guy like Hovland, who people are going to like because of his price. I'm not going to be on Hovland, but that 8,300 range, that leaves you with 6,600. Again, it's an ability to round out a lineup, take a high 5K guy. It puts you right back in the 7K range where there's a ton of guys that people are going to like. So if you're not playing Scottie, you can pretty much do anything you want with your lineup.
It is enticing when you start laying it out like that. Just 5 names in the $9,000 range. Xander Schauffele's 97. Tommy Fleetwood, 9,500. Our champion from 2019, Shane Lowry, is 93. Ludwig, 91. And Robert McIntyre at $9,000 even. Mike, I'll bounce this one back over to you. Small range here. Do you have any hot takes?
Small range. My hot takes are I'm doubling down on everything last week. Last week, I played Ludwig and Xander together in essentially everything. I will be doing that again. I am extremely likely to start. I'm playing 3 lineups. I'm extremely likely to start all 3 of them, but a minimum of 2 of the 3 with Rahm, Xander, Ludwig as my start. But Xander and Ludwig is where I'm going for sure. I rate them as co-favorites in the 9s. And frankly, the only 2 that I'm planning to play. Next, I would have Tommy Fleetwood. Probably not going to hurt you, probably not going to kill you, but I really don't think you're winning tournaments with Tommy Fleetwood this week. McIntyre after that, then Lowry, again, distant on both of those 2. But for me, it is Xander and Ludwig very, very clearly. I strongly prefer both of those guys over like Bryson, for example, right? So like Bryson, I would need Bryson to probably be like 8,500 to 8,900 for me to play him, which is a pretty strong statement on where I think he should be rated in this setup. But yeah, Xander, Ludwig, all in on both of those guys again this week.
Showing Lowry's stat profile right now, it hasn't been very good as of late. He's losing a lot of strokes on the putting surfaces. Xander has pretty elite Open Championship history. We talked a lot about Ludwig last week. So Sia, when you are looking at this range, are you going to step outside the Xander Ludwig box and be more exposed to somebody like Tommy, Bobby Mack, or Shane Lowry?
I don't really like any of those three names you just mentioned. I do want to point out, just because we've been doing this exercise, that Ludwig, who I don't think is going to be very popular, by the way, which is a good thing for purposes of this show and DFS, Ludwig, Rahm, and Xander leave you with almost 7,000, 6,933, which is a tremendous amount of money. So if you start there, you could fill out your lineup so easily, basically with 6 studs, in my opinion. With that in mind, listen, I don't know. Maybe Mike could convince me to come around on Ludwig. Tommy Fleetwood is interesting. I think he's going to gain some ownership as the week. I mean, he's going to be popular a little bit anyway because of what he did in 2019 here and what he has been doing just in general. Ball striking is certainly there for Tommy Fleetwood, kind of flat with the putter last week. I think he's going to start gaining some ownership because it's going to be a very comfortable click at 9,500. It's going to be very comfortable for people to put this guy as third man in, and they're going to be like, oh, he could easily top 5 this tournament. So I just kind of wanted to point that out, that while I think Xander is going to get some ownership, I think it's probably going to be Tommy Fleetwood that's going to be the guy that people really want to play. I'm not really interested in any of these guys, to be honest with you. And I might do the thing that I was referring to earlier, where I'm kind of stacking 210, whatever, 11K guys, and then I'm just going right down to the 8K, 7K range. But Xander is certainly my favorite, and I will be playing Xander. As far as everybody else, I might just kind of be out on everybody else.
Yeah, Mike, how do you think the ownership, it's obviously very early in the week, but we've got those big names at the top, a deep field all the way down. There are some question marks for guys in the 9K range. What do you think the ownership looks like for these guys here?
So I think it's very clearly going to be Xander. And then I do still think Tommy Fleetwood definitely surpasses a guy like Ludwig. I think there's a few more takers on Ludwig after what they saw last week. But I don't think enough. So big picture ownership, what I'm very convinced is going to happen. Again, this industry, we do shape narratives with this show, with other shows. It just does. And it's just the reality of it. Right. And there are 3 big narratives that have already formed and that will continue to form. And number 1 is it's Jon Rahm's time. He's an excellent fit. That number is going to move. He's going to essentially come in closer to where Rory is. Number 2, Bryson's going to continue to tank, just absolutely tank. That narrative that Bryson is not a good fit, that's going to happen. And then the third narrative that I believe is happening and will continue to happen is that Xander is all the way back. He had 1 bad tournament at the Travelers and he's back. It's slow greens. He was good other than losing a little bit on the putting surfaces. And I think his ownership is going to go up. So I think it's going to be heavy Rahm, heavy Xander, which I told you I'm playing both of those guys. I think there are plenty of ways to get creative and different, and you don't have to be different at every single spot, but I think that is definitely happening. So I will say very confidently Xander's the top owned here, then Tommy Fleetwood. After that, I don't think we're talking anybody above 10%. I think Ludwig's still going to slide in 8-9%, and I will be all in.
Okay, all in. I like that.
Okay. And I will tell you, you wanted me to convince a little bit on Ludwig. I mean, look at where he finished, T8, right? Still a positive gainer in every category last week. Round 3, though, 12, 13, and 14. He went bogey, triple bogey, bogey. Dropped 5 shots.
It somehow felt worse than that in the moment.
It was quite painful as someone who had Ludwig everywhere. 5 shots in 3 holes. Still managed to gain in every category on the week. Finished T8. And probably the most exciting part is he gained with the putter, not necessarily as strong in his strong suit, but wasn't great where he should be great. He did spend 2 weeks back in Sweden before, a little slower greens. This will now be, basically a month that he's been playing on surfaces like this. I'm all the way in, all in.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, if that's not going to convince you, see, I don't know what is. Let's roll on here to the 8K range because this is just 7 more names, and we're injecting more live golfers into the conversation. Question marks definitely exist for some of these guys. Terrell Hatton leads the way at 8,900 with Colin Morikawa checking in at 8,700. Justin Thomas is 85. He's right in the middle. Then we're going to round out this range with Victor Hovland, Joaquin Niemann, Patrick Cantlay, and Brooks Koepka. What is the assessment, Sia, on this very, very interesting $8,000 range?
Yeah, it's funny because, I just mentioned I don't really like the 9K range outside of Xander. I don't really love the 8K range. I do like Terrell Hatton, but again, I'm very much willing to pivot off of him if other people are going to love Terrell Hatton. I do think he's going to get a little bit of ownership. I mean, I can't tell you when the last time I played Colin. I'm not going in on this round for Colin Morikawa. And then Justin Thomas is a no for me. Victor Hovland should be popular because of his price. Just like Ludwig, I do fear the Victor Hovland experience around the green. Maybe if the wind is down, maybe that doesn't hurt them quite as bad. I mean, that's something to consider. But outside of that, Brooks, Cantlay, Niemann, just not interested. It's Terrell Hatton or move on. And again, the way I'm building my lineups, I might just skip this 8K range.
Seats says, hot take, Cantlay is the best in the 8K range. Change my mind. I think he should come on here and change our minds. It's like, you're innocent until proven guilty. You're kind of a bad links player until proven otherwise. But no, seriously, Mike, the Patrick Cantlay stuff is fascinating. From a 1,000 rounds perspective, everything is really strong. It's just, he has not been in contention basically at all this year. His Open Championship record is okay at best. And there's other guys in this 8K range that have question marks, but does he make some of your builds here? I mean, what's going on with the Cant man?
I don't think he does. So peek behind the curtain. Most of what's happening when we run the show is just a lot of projection, a little bit of projected ownership. What happens right before lineups go in is a lot of projected ownership and a lot of simulation based on what the field is doing. So without knowing what the field is doing, I'm no interest in Patrick Cantlay, not remotely close. With what the field does, it's possible that he could sneak in. I'm going to say unlikely at his price point because of the fact that I'm starting with Rahm, Xander, Ludwig, only because of that. So I'm going to be out there. I strongly prefer Victor Hovland in this one. One thing weather-wise that I saw as well, I know Sia mentioned a great point about the wind potentially being an issue for Victor. I don't think we're getting wind. I really don't. I think we're getting calm winds, like 8 miles per hour. And what's interesting about it to me, if you look at the wind, it's coming from the opposite direction of when it's usually bad here. So when it's usually bad in 30 mile per hour winds, it's coming from one direction. We're getting the exact opposite wind. To me, I think it's going to be very much a non-factor. I think how wet will the golf course get is definitely a question and all of that. But for me, Victor is just so good on approach, pretty good at terms of greens and regulation. Yeah, is there a chance that he's going to do what Ludwig did last week and triple bogey and then followed up with a bogey? Yes, it's probably going to happen one of those 4 rounds. Is it enough to end his tournament? I hope not, right? But I'm going to be in on Victor because I will embrace that volatility. This 8K range, there are only 3 guys that I would even consider. It is Hovland, JT, Terrell Hatton in that specific order. But the only one I'm playing for sure without a doubt is Victor Hovland.
Yeah, the Hatton stuff is kind of interesting. His Open Championship record, he missed the cut at Troon last year, but it was back-to-back top 20s in 2023 and 2022. He's got a handful of top 10s as well. And of course, last time we saw him in a major championship, he was very much in it around Oakmont. Let's continue this conversation. We've got the 7s, the 6s, and the 5s. We're going to do just that with a lot more names to choose from after a quick word from our partners.
They want to take this place from us.
My family is in danger. My wife is lost to me, and I don't have time.
1923, new season now streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus.
The 7K range has a couple of fan favorites, or at least questions from the fans. We've got Zach asking about Adam Scott. We've got Max asking about Russell Henley. They both reside in this range, so we'll get to those golfers. It also includes names like Jordan Spieth, Matt Fitzpatrick, Sam Burns is in here, Ben Griffin back in play, Patrick Reed, Ryan Fox, and a handful of others, 16 in total, Sia. I won't ask you directly about Adam Scott and Russell Henley just yet, unless you have a strong opinion on either one of those, but I want to give you access to this entire 7K range.
I have a very strong opinion about Adam Scott. I think Adam Scott can win this tournament at a long number, which I think he's in that 75-1 range. Open Championship experience is great. I love, like, if we look at the strokes gain metrics, I love what we're looking at there. He had such a bad stretch, like Matt Fitzpatrick, by the way, who I'm about to mention. But look what he's doing with the ball striking. We know the around the green play can be good, although sometimes it's a little spotty. And the putter's been okay, kind of hit or miss, but okay over the last 5-6 tournaments. So I think Adam Scott is a great DFS play. I'm hoping he doesn't have a lot of ownership. I don't think he'll have a ton, but he might have some. I like Adam Scott and Matt Fitzpatrick a lot. I had Matt Fitzpatrick outright last week. I'm going to have him outright again this week at 55-1. Really like how he's rounding into form with the ball striking, with the putting, the around the green play, like truly checking all the boxes. Like talking about Xander Schauffele rounding into form. We could say the same on maybe a smaller level from a win equity standpoint with Matt Fitzpatrick. Those are my two favorite. I think Justin Rose is a good call. I think Patrick Reed, if we're looking at around the green and creativity and a guy who just shows up at majors when we're not necessarily expecting it. Really like those four. And then I like some guys in the bottom range we can talk about later.
Adam Scott has only missed one cut at an Open Championship since 2009. Matt Fitzpatrick's most recent 3, the 17th at the Travelers, the 8th at the Rocket, and of course the 4th place finish last week at the Scottish Open, with the advanced metrics getting better and better every single week. Okay, Mike, let's see what you can find us here in this 7K range, please.
We have to talk about Ben Griffin. If you like computers like I do, it would be hard to not have Ben Griffin rate well for you.
It's pretty crazy.
I had him in the top 10, which seemed crazy. And I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not a true data scientist. A real data scientist would hate me because I will manually manipulate and massage certain numbers based off my opinion data. And I'm not afraid to do that. I have bumped him manually down to about 16th in this field, which to me feels better than having him inside the top 10.
Is that just because of the pedigree? Like what makes your heart say, no, Ben Griffin can't be in the top 10. He has to be 16th.
So I'll tell you what it is. Honestly, Rick, I would have liked him. And again, it's very different between the Scottish Open and the Open Championship. I would have liked to see him at the Scottish and just playing the week before, halfway across the world. That would have been something that would be ideal for me. The fact that he has actually played this, not this course, obviously, but an Open Championship before, and it hasn't particularly gone well. It's a two-headed argument there, because while it didn't particularly go well, he also wasn't playing nearly the caliber of golf that he is this season. He's been a top 10 golfer this season. It just felt right to ding him a little bit, put him down to 16th. It still gives me plenty of exposure to him. I'm still supposed to be betting him outright at 90-1. I'm still going to be having him in top 40, including tie markets. I may play him in DFS at 7,300, but I don't want to get myself into a pinch situation where I had 100% of pinch last week. I don't think that I would get away with it with 100% of Ben Griffin this week.
What a flex.
Well, thanks to Rick Rungood. I didn't even know how to say the guy's name until Thursday.
You don't have to say his name. You just have to click his name, right?
That's
you don't
right.
have to say it at all. I find the most interesting thing about Ben Griffin, and I don't disagree with you, Mike, is that this man has only played in 2 major championships because he did not qualify for the Masters, and he has finished T8 and T10 in those 2 majors. And like he might have the best major championship season of anybody, and he only qualified for 3 of them. It's wild.
I like how Mike is like, I wish he'd played the Genesis Scottish Open. Meanwhile, the guy plays like every single tournament in 2025.
I know. He's played more than anybody.
I will go back to the 7Ks though and give you my list. I do have a list here.
Okay.
It's deep. There are 8 guys that I could play, and I will rank them. Number 1, Fitzpatrick. Buying in, the ownership's there, probably not going to kill my lineup. Jordan Spieth is number 2. I will bank on Jordan Spieth's creativity at that price point. Ben Griffin was 3, as I mentioned, but Jordan Spieth, I honestly think he's actually driving the golf ball well too. Like I think he's not going to get in trouble off the tee. So usually, like I definitely want to couple the creativity with someone who could be erratic off the tee. But if he's going to be good off the tee and carry that creativity, I think Spieth could be very competitive. And then quickly through my list, it's Fitz, Spieth, Griffin, Rose, Scott, Fox, Day, and Straka.
Off the top of my head, if you look at Open Championship, just like straight Open Championship history, it's like Xander 1, Jordan Spieth 2, or something of that nature. I mean, it's splendid stuff. He withdrew from the Travelers. That was the scap injury, as he says on Twitter, but seemingly all good. See, I'm going to give you one more crack here at the 7K range before we move on, because I do think there are interesting names. You know, there were questions about Sepp Straka that Sepp made Mike's list for sure. He's coming off a better finish, $7,400 there. The other thing that I find interesting are guys like Cameron Young, guys like Corey Connors or Jason Day. You know, Cam Young has played a little bit better. His open record is very strong in 3 starts. There's just some kind of second tier names in the 7K range that I'm not ready to forego just yet.
Yeah, I mean, I know Mike mentioned Sepp Straka. I think he's interesting. If he gets ownership, I'm certainly willing to fade him. Ben Griffin, I'm convinced. Mike convinced me on Ben Griffin. Names maybe we haven't mentioned. I think Thomas Dietrich is interesting from an upside standpoint, a guy that's not going to get any ownership. I think Brian Harman is interesting. We've obviously seen him perform at Open Championships before. And I think he's just a fine course fit, especially with what we're looking for off the tee. I'm trying to find somebody else. I mean, Cameron Young, I'm not going to play, but I don't have a problem if somebody wants to play his upside. I think I mentioned Patrick Reed. There's nobody else I'm really interested in here. As far as like there are guys like Hideki, and Spieth is interesting because I do worry about the injury, but I think he's fine. And he just had a kid. If you want to play the narrative, strokes gain narrative dad, that certainly is a play. But that's my list in the 7K range. There's nobody else I want to play.
Okay, well, we can continue here because the 6K range is where we start getting into a massive number of golfers. There are 52 of them in the 6K range, and then another, oh my goodness, basically 60 or so in the 5K range. So there's 120 golfers still that we have not reached their price point yet. So Mike, let's start with the 6K range just for perspective. Names at the top: Chris Gotterup, Aaron Rai, JJ Spawn. The middle of this range is they just threw all the Højgaards in here. Both Rasmus and Nikolai are both 6,500. And then the bottom, not the min price, the bottom of this tier, Nick Taylor, Romain Langasque, Marco Penge back in action. Remember, this pricing came out before the conclusion of the Genesis. So he is down there at $6,000. What do you want to take away here, Mike?
There are 2 guys that they're going to gain some ownership. We'll see how much, but just bad misprices on Penge and Harris English. Really, really bad. Like I've got both of them in the top 25 of this tournament overall on win equity alone. So I'm way above on both of them. Penge, I think, is fascinating to me, right? So when you look at the PGA Championship, that's what I want to talk about. You can talk about the quality of every single thing else here. Love the fact that he's a World Tour guy, played a little more links golf, or at least, international courses. Had that PGA Championship success. Yes, you see lost 4 with the putter. He had one bad round. The 33rd round, I think he shot 74. He was dangerously close to top 10ing the PGA Championship, right ahead of this other little run that he's on right now. He's probably going to be very popular, but makes a ton of lineups work. And I firmly believe in this field, you're getting a $7,500 player for 6K. So I'll be playing him. And then Harris English, same thing with Harris English. I don't know that he's necessarily got great Open Championship history, but the skill set and just like total strokes gained, right? Look at the last 24 round. He's like 13th in this field in total strokes gained. Really, really strong on greens and regulation, pretty strong on approach. I mean, there's no real scenario where Harris English isn't at least like the 30th best player in this field, and he's certainly not priced like it.
He's a winner this year. He's been playing great golf. He's very well rounded. I want to just follow up on one thing there, Mike, because there are a handful of guys like Harris English. You could throw Keegan Bradley into the mix. Justin Thomas, to an extent, less sample size. Guys that you might be more excited about if they had better history at Opens. How much are you knocking that? How much are you considering the fact that Harris English has struggled? Keegan Bradley has struggled at Opens.
So I'm definitely considering it. As Sia mentioned earlier in the show, I think that it if it's real bad, I will certainly penalize for it. The one I'm penalizing more than anyone is probably Keegan Bradley at 6,700. He probably gets the biggest penalty. And it mostly is just, it's a massive sample size of just not good. So I'm penalizing for sure. I'm not rewarding for a lot.
Okay, fair enough. Sia, we've got last week's winner. We've got last majors winner. We've got a 2022 champion golfer of the year. We've got a variety of names that we can go through. What stands out to you in the sixes?
I think my favorite, it's funny, by the way, because the first name I was going to say was JJ Spawn. And if you remember my little soliloquy last week, I was like, yeah, we keep talking about JJ Spawn like he doesn't exist. And it turns out he didn't exist on Saturday or Sunday because he didn't make the cut. So I played him a little bit. It didn't work out. I think JJ Spawn, I'm willing to go right back to him, especially if nobody's really going to play him, which I suspect, especially after last week, nobody is. I think Carlos Ortiz is interesting because we know he's flashed. Now, granted, since the last major, he hasn't been great on the Live Tour, but I'm not really super concerned about that. I think Carlos Ortiz has some upside. Harry Hall, Harris English, those guys make sense. We'll have to kind of monitor ownership. Novak is a guy that Mike was willing to play last week, and he obviously popped for him. Penge, I obviously like, got to monitor ownership to some degree. I think a guy that I've been on, I wasn't really on him last week, but that I've been on for the last month that missed the cut last week that I think people are just going to forget about is Tristan Lawrence. I really think he's an interesting play, especially if ownership, which it should be, pretty low on him. He has good open experience, A, but B, he's just been playing really well. And I honestly think this is the type of player who was playing a lot of golf on the PGA Tour specifically over the last month and a half. I think a missed cut actually might benefit Tristan Lawrence here from a rest standpoint. I'd say the same about Mike's guy, Ben Griffin, who didn't play last week. So I think Tristan is a sneaky play.
Well, it certainly wasn't a horrible missed cut. He lost a quarter of a stroke to the field over 2 rounds. He drove it well. That's a pretty easy missed cut. You don't beat too many guys up for that. Anybody else here in this range, gentlemen, that is worth consideration?
I'll just double down on Harry Hall. I didn't mention him. I like him a lot. The dude's just not going to 3-putt, which I love. I absolutely love. So I love Harry Hall. Daniel Berger, I'm not going to do it. I could see it happening.
I would love to, but man, the putter.
He's the exact opposite of Harry Hall in terms of 3-putting. Daniel Berger is definitely going to 3-putt. If you put those two together, they'd be a fantastic player.
They'd be the best player in the world.
Yes.
Yeah. Other 6K guys. I mean, the one that I could, this could be my really low owned guy like Novak last week that I played. If my computer gives me Akshay Bhatia at single digits, very low, even though he missed the cut in the Open last year, I will probably play it because he is very good on approach. I think he's pretty good in terms of the 3-putt avoidance. I don't think anyone's going to talk about him. I think anyone's going to play him. Hasn't particularly been great, but he is good on approach.
He hasn't, but he's getting out of the slump, in my opinion. It was really bad from after the Players until the PGA.
Yeah.
And now it's getting better. Handful of top 25s in there. We haven't seen him play since Detroit, so he's certainly going to be fresh when he gets to Northern Ireland. The 5K, you heard me right? 5K range, another just huge batch of names, and some that we spoke about last week. Jordan L. Smith, Christopher Reeton at the top, along with Matthew Pavone and Max Grazerman. The middle of the $5,000 range, things start to definitely soften. John Parry, Jonathan Vegas, Henrik Stenson. And then the bottom of the 5K range, these are your open qualifiers. There is open qualifying for the Open, as you can imagine, happens all throughout the UK. And then some past champions like Darren Clark is in here. Ernie Els, who I believe has now withdrawn, but he was priced at 5,200 before that happened. Just to give you an idea, Stuart Sink of the types of names that you're finding at the very, very bottom of this field. So Sia, this is your pure value. If you want to get some of those triple-headed big monsters at the top of the board into your lineups, you might need a little bit of relief.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going Roy, Rom, Xander, you pretty much have to go down in this range. Not that that's how you have to build your lineup, of course, because you really don't have to flirt with this range at all, even if you stack it at the top, because the 6K range, pretty rich, even at the bottom there. Jordan Smith, I think, is pretty interesting. I think he has good Open experience, but certainly the recent form in terms of the Scottish Open, pretty good there as well with the T22. Yeah, I mean, it's not great, the Open experience, but he's made 2 out of 4 cuts, which for a guy in the 5K range isn't terrible. Reeton is certainly a guy that is on my mind. I think Antoine Rosner is an interesting play at 5,600. If you really want to deep dive, Zach Johnson is 5,200. But again, outside of Jordan Smith and Rosner, I'm probably not interested in playing anybody else.
Here's Antoine Rosner's profile coming off the 22nd at the Scottish Open. He has now made every single cut since the American Express. That was in January. So that was quite some time ago. Rosner's been putting up decent finishes, or at least cashing checks. Diamonds in the rough are what I'm looking for here, Mike. What can you find me?
If the regular viewers of the program know, this is generally the segment that I have pieced out on and said, guys, I'm done. I'm not playing these guys. While that's probably true once again,
I just like the idea of Mike just sitting this part out. Just I'm done. It's been a great show. Thank you all.
$5,900 Max Gracerman. Look, it was the miscut disappointing incredibly, right? He lost like 2 strokes off the tee in 1 round. It probably shouldn't have happened and won't happen again. Skill set wise, he could easily be 6,900 and not 5,900. If you need to go down in this range, I think he is a fine play. Kevin Yu, I would say the exact same thing about at 5,800. Rosner and Jordan Smith would be the other 2 that I could convince myself to play if I needed to.
Sia, if I remember correctly, Zach Johnson at 5,200 was like the bottom. He's as low as you would go. Does that sound right?
He's as low as I would go in theory, because in practice, I'm not going to play him.
Yeah. Mike, in theory, how low could I get you to commit on this board?
$5,900 Max Gracerman.
Oh man. Okay. I thought I could get you.
But I'm not playing Scottie this week. So if you're not playing Scottie, there's no reason to dip down there. If you are playing Scottie, if you are not Graceman.
Okay, if you are not playing Scottie and you play Max, can your other 5 just end up being, what does that give you? So 44,100.
Right. I will start a lineup with Gracerman, build it here, start with my core of Rom. And then after Rom, I want Xander. After that, I want Ludwig. I still have 7,450 remaining. Yeah, I mean, then I could, you could, it's unbelievable. You can get whatever you want still. Like,
did I do that, Josh? Did I kick Sia out somehow? Or did you do that? Maybe I kicked him out.
Sorry. I'm back.
Sorry, Sia, if I kicked you out. I was clicking around like a crazy man. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, so wow, that's going to open up a lot of possibilities if you're not playing Scottie and you are willing to go down into that range. What is so there's Steven's in the chat asking about player pools, and this is a little bit different. I don't think we're 150 maxing, but he is kind of trying to get to how many guys should be in his pool. And I always feel like this question is definitely a little bit of personal preference, or at least a little bit of risk tolerance, right? Like, how much are you willing to stomach? If you're willing to stomach a lot, 12 if you're willing to stop. You know what I mean? Like where do you fall in on this, Mike?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. You mentioned risk tolerance. That is truly what it comes down to. It comes down to what can you sustainably do? The fewer people you play, the more upside you have. And what I mean by that is when you're right, you're going to really be right and you're going to cash in. The more you play, like the thought process generally is that you're essentially covering the field and all it takes is one bullet. And I get that. And that is true to some extent, but with the rake as high as it is and the contests the way they are, and frankly, the field as sharp as they are, what tends to happen when you overextend the number of people in your player pool is you essentially just end up paying rake. You essentially end up breaking even because you're spread so thin. I personally prefer, so example, last week played 3 lineups. I had either 10 or 11 golfers there, but I had 2 golfers in all of the lineups. And then the third golfer was in 2 of the 3. So for me, it's less about the number of overall players. So like you're talking about 150 set here. I don't necessarily care if you play 50 total golfers or 75. What matters to me is those core 10 to 12 that you have better be in 75% of those lineups or more. And you better be just really, for me, I prefer to just be extremely aggressive because when you're right, you get paid off in a big way, which I personally think is more important.
So that's what I like, Sia, is having a very strong core. And if I want to get access to 20 different golfers and they're all in one lineup each, like, okay, that is increasing the total number of players in my player pool. So I'm not even sure the right question is how many players are in your player pool. It's like, how are those players allocated within your player pool?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm also not a 150 maxer, but I do play more lineups than Mike. And I've over the years, I've tried to sort of restrict the number. I think for 150 max people, I tend to hear the numbers like somewhere between like 25 and 35 is usually the player pool. But again, it does come down to how many like core guys you have in there that overlap with each other. I think that's sort of the important part of the equation.
Any final thoughts on an Open Championship? We are far from done. A lot of content coming this week. Best bets are tomorrow, Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern time. We've got some network shows this week and something after every single round. So plenty of content, but is there anything else that we cannot move on from right now? Okay. I'm getting head shakes, which is usually a good sign. All right. That'll do it. Tuesday night, 7 p.m., early wedge, best bets for producer Josh, for Nejad, for Mike McClure. I'm Rick Gehman. This has been the Early Wedge. We'll catch you next time.